The mountains were breathing again. You could hear it in the wind that wound through the pines like an old song, low, restless and ancient. It was the kind of night when even the stars seemed to hide behind their clouds. And every sound, every whisper of leaves, made you wonder if something was listening back. I'd grown used to silence in these woods. My veterinary clinic sat on the edge of town, just past the last gas station, and before the mountain trail began to climb. Most nights it was peaceful. The steady tick of the old wall clock, the soft hum of the heater, and the gentle rhythm of a dog's breathing after surgery. But tonight the quiet didn't feel right. It pressed in too tightly, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I rubbed my arms, glancing at the rain streaking down the windows. The storm had come faster than expected, sheets of water sliding off the roof, lightning flashing over the ridge. It painted the room in pulses of cold white light. For a moment, I thought I saw movement outside, a shadow darting between the trees. But when I blinked, there was nothing. Just nerves, I muttered to myself. Storm's making you jumpy. I was still adjusting to this life solitary, quiet, far from the city where everything had fallen apart. After my brother died in an accident last winter, I couldn't stay there anymore. The noise, the people, the endless questions about how I was coping. So, I came back to our hometown, took over his clinic, and tried to make peace with the ghosts I couldn't see but always felt. The phone rang, startling me. The clock showed 10:42 p.m. No one ever called this late unless it was an emergency. I snatched up the receiver, brushing away my unease. Dr. Clara Hayes speaking. The line crackled. I could hear static, then faint breathing, slow, deliberate. Hello? I said again, louder this time. A low voice, deep and distant, answered. You've called me. I frowned. Excuse me? You've summoned me, it said again, each word drawn out like a sigh from the earth itself. Something cold crawled down my spine. I checked the phone's display. No number. Just blank space. I think you've got the wrong line, I said carefully. This is a veterinary clinic. The voice didn't respond. Instead, I heard a sound behind it, something between a growl and a rumble, low and wild, echoing like thunder through a tunnel. Then, the line went dead. I set the phone down slowly, staring at it as the storm roared outside. It had to be a prank call, I told myself. Or maybe interference from the weather. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen had passed through that connection. Something ancient that recognized my voice. I tried to go back to work, but my focus was gone. Every noise made me flinch. The creak of the old floorboards, the wind howling against the eaves, the soft drip from the sink. I checked the front door twice just to be sure it was locked up by 11:30. I gave up pretending I wasn't spooked. I grabbed my coat and walked to the back room where the rescued animals were sleeping. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp near the kennels. A golden retriever puppy lifted its head and wagged its tail sleepily when I passed. Hey there, Max, I whispered, kneeling beside him. You heard that too, didn't you? He whined softly, then turned his gaze toward the window. His ears perked. The fur along his back rose. Easy, I murmured, but my heart was already hammering. Lightning flashed again, and for the briefest second I saw it. 2 glowing eyes reflected in the glass. Not yellow like a dog's, not red like light's trickery. Golden. Bright, unblinking. I spun toward the door and grabbed the flashlight from the counter. By the time I stepped outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the forest was cloaked in mist. My boots sank into the wet earth as I followed the faint prints leading from the tree line toward the clinic. Paw prints. Large ones. far too large for any wolf I'd ever treated. Hello? My voice sounded too small in the fog. Is someone out there? The only answer was the whisper of rain through leaves. I followed the trail until it ended abruptly, half paw, half human footprint, disappearing into nothing. My stomach twisted. The stories came rushing back, the ones the locals used to tell when I was a child. They spoke of things that walked between worlds on nights like this, of guardians and curses, of wolves that were not wolves at all, that those were just tales to scare children. Weren't they? I'd backed toward the porch, flashlight trembling in my hand. When I reached the door, I froze. The phone inside the clinic was ringing again. Through the thin wooden walls, I could hear it echoing one long, steady tone, almost melodic. Almost calling. I stepped inside, dripping and shaking, and lifted the receiver. Who is this? The same voice, low, calm, but closer now, answered. You opened the door between us, Clara. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? To finish what began long ago. The line hissed, then went silent. Thunder cracked so close it rattled the shelves. The power flickered, then died completely, plunging the clinic into darkness. For a long moment I stood frozen, listening to the rain and my own pulse. Then I heard it, a deep, rhythmic sound outside the door. Not quite footsteps. Not quite breathing. Something in between. I grabbed the flashlight again and swept its beam across the window. Nothing. Then, just as I was about to turn away, a shadow moved across the glass, a massive shape, low to the ground. Watching, I caught only a glimpse before it disappeared into the trees. But it was enough. Whatever had answered that call wasn't human. And it knew my name. The storm didn't end when the rain stopped. It stayed in the air, in the clouds that never cleared, in the way my heart thudded every time I walked past the window. It had been 2 days since that call too. Days since those golden eyes glowed in the dark, outside my clinic, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen had followed me back inside that night. At first, I told myself it was just nerves. Isolation does strange things to the mind. The clinic was quiet again, the generator humming softly, the animals resting peacefully in their cages. Everything looked the same. Yet everything felt wrong. It started with small things. My keys weren't where I left them. The back door, which I always locked, would sometimes be slightly open in the mornings. A faint scent like pine and smoke lingered in the hallway. Though I hadn't lit the fireplace in weeks, the air felt heavier too, as though I wasn't breathing alone. On the third night, I woke up from a dream that didn't feel like a dream. I was standing in the forest, barefoot, the moon silvering the trees around me. Someone whispered my name, Clara, softly, almost tenderly, from behind the fog. I turned and saw a shadow moving closer, tall and silent, its eyes gleaming gold. When I reached out, it said, "You called and I came." I woke with my heart pounding and my phone ringing. It was exactly 3:13. My hands shook as I answered. Hello? Only silence. Then, a faint growl, deep like a storm caught inside a chest. Who is this? I whispered. No reply. Just breathing. Then the call dropped. I sat there for a long time in the dark, the dream still clinging to me. The scent of pine and smoke was in the air again. When dawn came, I told myself it had to be some prank caller, maybe one of the local teenagers who liked to test their courage by creeping around the woods. But deep down, I knew this wasn't that simple. Later that morning, I had my first client, a farmer from the outskirts of town. His hands trembled as he held his hat, his face pale. "Doc," he said, "something's been killing livestock up my way. Not like coyotes. Bigger, meaner, left no blood. Just silence." My stomach turned. "You think it's wolves?" He hesitated. Don't sound like any wolves I ever heard, more like something angry that shouldn't be here. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin. I'm sure there's a natural explanation. He didn't look convinced. Just be careful, Dr. Hayes. These mountains remember things. Sometimes they send them back. When he left, his words stayed with me. That afternoon, the sheriff stopped by for coffee. Sheriff Holt had known me since childhood, always patient and kind in that small-town way. But even he looked uneasy when I mentioned the farmer's story. Coyotes, bears, maybe a cougar wandering through, he said, though his tone lacked confidence. But if you see anything strange, call me right away. And keep your doors locked, Clara. Promise me. I promised. Still, that night, I couldn't bring myself to turn off all the lights by the 5th day. Sleep had become impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard faint whispers in the wind outside. Sometimes they sounded like words unfamiliar, ancient. Other times, it was just the rhythm of breathing that didn't belong to me. Max, the puppy, sensed it too. He'd bark suddenly at nothing, his ears pinned back, his gaze fixed on some unseen corner. When I tried to comfort him, he'd whine and press against my legs like he wanted me to hide too. One evening, I decided to clear my head. The storm clouds were finally breaking, and a thin ribbon of twilight stretched across the horizon. I walked down the gravel path toward the woods, flashlight in hand, my boots crunching softly against damp earth. The air smelled of wet leaves and pine resin. Peaceful almost, until I heard footsteps behind me. Sheriff, I called, turning around. No one was there. I kept walking, trying to convince myself it was just an animal. Then the footsteps came again, closer this time, matching my pace. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the trees. Still nothing. But when I turned forward again, I froze. Someone or something was standing at the edge of the trail. A tall silhouette, motionless, half hidden by the mist. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The figure didn't move. It simply watched me. Then, as the last light of evening flickered through the branches, I saw those same golden eyes gleaming through the fog. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The air, my pulse, the world itself. Then, as if sensing my fear, the figure took one slow step forward. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking. "Stay away." The moment the words left my mouth, the light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. I fumbled with the flashlight, panic rising, but when the beam finally flickered back on, the path was empty. No footprints, no eyes, nothing but the echo of my own breathing. When I returned to the clinic, the front door was open. I was certain I'd locked it. My hands trembled as I stepped inside. The lights were still on, flickering faintly from the power surge. Everything looked normal except for one thing. The phone receiver was off the hook, dangling by its cord slowly. I lifted it to my ear. Static. Then through the crackle, I heard it again, the same voice from that night. "You can't hide from what you called." "Clara." I slammed the phone down and backed away. My heart pounding. Max began barking from the back room, frantic, terrified. I ran to him, but before I reached his cage, every light in the clinic flickered once more and went out completely. The generator hadn't failed this time. The switch had been turned off. From somewhere beyond the door. The wind carried a faint sound, half growl, half whisper. I couldn't tell if it came from the forest or from right outside the walls. For a long time, I stood frozen in the dark, every nerve alive with the sense that something was just beyond sight. Waiting. Then, through the window, a faint shadow moved across the porch large. Powerful and unmistakably human. I held my breath. afraid to move, afraid even to blink. The figure paused at the door. And though no knock came, I heard a voice, low and calm, from the other side, close enough to feel its vibration in my chest. "You opened the bombed healer," it whispered. "Now, I must answer." The porch creaked. Then silence. When I finally dared to look outside again, the mist was gone. Only the paw prints remained, leading away from the door and back into the woods. But this time, there were two sets. One animal, one human. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind made me flinch. The forest outside had gone utterly still, as if even the owls were holding their breath. When dawn finally came, the world felt grey and hollow, like the storm had stolen its colour. I poured myself a cup of coffee, though my hand shook too much to drink it. The clinic was quiet except for the ticking clock and Max's occasional whimper from the back room. I was about to open the blinds when something caught my eye on the porch. At first, I thought it was a pile of wet leaves. But then it moved. A man lay there bare-chested, half covered in torn clothes and mud, his body trembling with the cold. I froze. My first instinct was fear, but something about him, something almost familiar, pulled me closer. I grabbed a blanket and rushed outside, the cold air biting at my face. "Hey," I said softly, kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" He stirred, groaning. When he lifted his head, I gasped. His eyes, those same golden eyes that had haunted me through the storm, met mine. Every muscle in my body tensed. My first thought was to run. My second was to stay. "You," I whispered. "You were in the woods." He blinked, trying to focus. "You called," he rasped. His voice was deep, rough, and strangely steady for someone in pain. "I came." His words made my stomach twist. The air between us seemed to thicken, humming with some invisible energy. I could feel his presence pressing against me, not threatening but powerful, like standing too close to fire. "You need a doctor," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You're hurt." "I'll heal," he murmured. "I always do." I hesitated, glancing toward the forest. "Who are you?" His gaze softened, though his jaw tightened as if holding back something heavy. "Lucien." "Lucien what?" He gave a faint, bitter smile. "Just Lucien. Names mean little where I come from." Before I could ask more, his body convulsed slightly. The wounds along his ribs, deep gashes that looked almost like claw marks, were already closing. The bleeding had slowed. I'd never seen anything like it. I helped him inside, despite every instinct screaming that this was a mistake. He was heavy, his skin burning with fever, or maybe that was just me trembling beneath his touch. I laid him on the clinic cot, wrapped him in blankets, and fetched water. As I dabbed the cloth across his forehead, his hand shot out and caught my wrist. Not harshly, just firm enough to make me freeze. "You shouldn't have called me, Clara," he said quietly. My breath caught. "How do you know my name?" He released me slowly. "Because I've known it for longer than you think." I stepped back, the air suddenly too thin. "You're not making any sense." He closed his eyes, exhaling like he'd been carrying centuries of exhaustion. "I don't expect you to understand." "Not yet." For hours I watched him sleep, torn between fear and fascination. The mark on his shoulder, a faint crescent scar, seemed to pulse in rhythm with the storm outside. He was too still, too quiet, yet something about him filled the room like a presence that couldn't be contained. By afternoon, I'd convinced myself he was just a stranger, a delusional, injured man who'd gotten lost in the woods. That theory lasted until the sheriff knocked on my door. "Morning, Clara," Sheriff Holt said, tipping his hat. "Heard from some hikers that they saw strange tracks up the ridge again. You haven't seen anything unusual, have you?" My throat went dry. Unusual? Wolves, maybe. Though they say these prints were half human. I forced a laugh. You know, mountain tailies. People love a good mystery. He smiled faintly but didn't look convinced. You'd tell me if someone was snooping around your property, right? Of course. As soon as he left, I closed the curtains and leaned against the door, shaking. Lucien was awake, watching me. You shouldn't lie to him, he said. His voice was steady again, but his eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. What are you? I whispered. He hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. A remnant. A keeper of what's forgotten. A wolf, once bound to the old ways. I stared at him. That's not possible. He rose slowly, his movements graceful, almost too fluid for someone still recovering. You think these mountains are just trees and stone? You think the stories your grandmother told were just fairy tales? I think you're hurt and confused, I said, though even as I spoke, I wasn't sure I believed it. He took a step closer. My pulse jumped. The air shifted, charged with something ancient and wild. You called me by name, he said softly. That's how the bond begins. I didn't call anyone. I snapped, more from fear than anger. Lucien tilted his head slightly, studying me. Maybe not with words, but your heart remembers what your mind has forgotten. The way he said it made my chest tighten. I wanted to back away, but I couldn't move. His presence was magnetic, both terrifying and beautiful, like watching a storm form over the sea. Why me? I whispered. His expression darkened. Because your blood carries the mark of the healers, the ones who once tended our kind before the curse. I'm just a veterinarian, I said, shaking my head. You're more than that, Clara. His voice dropped to a near whisper. You always were. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind outside moaned against the windows, and the scent of pine and smoke returned, stronger than ever. His eyes caught the light, golden, luminous, unearthly. Something inside me shifted, a strange pull I couldn't explain. Fear, curiosity, and something dangerously close to longing tangled inside me. He turned away first, as if sensing my confusion. You should rest, he said. Tonight will not be quiet. What do you mean? There are others who felt the call. Not all will come in peace. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat by the window, watching the tree line while Lucien rested in the next room. I could hear him breathing steady, calm, like the rhythm of the earth itself. Outside, the forest shimmered with mist. I thought I saw movement, dark shapes weaving between the trees. But when I blinked, they vanished. Then I heard it, a low, distant howl. Not the call of an ordinary wolf, but something deeper, more resonant. It rolled through the valley like thunder. Lucien appeared behind me, silent as a shadow. They're looking for you now, he said quietly. For me? His gaze met mine, steady and unflinching. For what you carry. For what you've awakened. My heart pounded. And what exactly is that? He stepped closer, so close that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. An ancient bond forged long before your kind forgot the language of the moon. Outside, another howl echoed closer this time. Lucien's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Stay near me, Clara. The night is not kind to those who stand alone. For the first time since the storm began, I wasn't sure if the danger was outside my door, or standing right beside me. The morning after meeting Elias should have been ordinary. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and pine. My coffee was too bitter, and the town outside was as still as ever. But nothing felt the same. Every sound was sharper now, the hum of the lights, the wind scraping against the old windows, the faint rustle of leaves in the trees beyond the road. Even the animals sensed something. The dogs barked toward the forest, their eyes following invisible shapes. The horses refused to move toward the north fence. And when I passed the kennel, every creature inside went silent for exactly 3 seconds, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. That silence burned into me by noon. I'd convinced myself it was all in my head. I buried myself in paperwork, filing health charts and organizing medicine. But around 2 o'clock, my assistant, Clara, peeked in and said quietly, "There's a man waiting for you outside. He says it's urgent." My heart jumped. "What does he look like?" She frowned. "Tall, dark coat." He didn't give a name. But he's kind of hard to look away from. That description alone made my stomach twist. I stepped outside into the pale sunlight and froze. It wasn't Elias. The man was older, his eyes silver instead of amber. His face carved with sharp lines that looked almost unnatural in their symmetry. His coat fluttered slightly in the cold wind, and though he stood perfectly still, the air around him seemed to hum. "Dr. Morgan," he said smoothly. His voice carried a calm authority that sent goosebumps along my arms. "You treated someone last night. I'm here to ask if he's..." "Well," I swallowed. "You mean Elias?" At the sound of the name, something flickered in his expression, something almost like disdain. "So he gave you that name?" My throat went dry. "That's what he told me." The stranger took a slow step closer. "If you see him again," he said, "you must not speak his true name, nor should you invite him inside your home. Not again." His warning sliced through the cold like a blade. "Who are you?" I asked. He gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who has seen what happens when humans forget that monsters do not always wear fangs." Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the woods. His boots barely left a sound on the gravel. Within moments, he vanished between the trees, swallowed by the shadows. I stood frozen, my breath fogging the air. Monsters. When I finally went back inside, Clara was pale. "Who was that?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "But if you hear or see anything strange tonight, lock the doors." That evening I drove home in a fog of thoughts I couldn't name. Every word that stranger had said repeated in my mind, echoing like a curse. "Don't invite him in again." But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about Elias. The way his voice had sounded low, calm, as though he knew things about me no one else did. The way his eyes seemed to flicker when he said my name. I told myself it was nothing, just imagination. Then, as I parked by the house, I noticed something odd. Paw prints in the mud by my porch. They weren't from any dog I'd ever seen. Too large, too deep. And they didn't lead to the woods, they led from them. Straight toward my door. My heart began to race. I scanned the yard, but nothing moved. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I went inside and locked the door, trying to calm my breath. The house was dark except for the dim lamp by the window. My phone buzzed on the table. A message. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. "Stay away from the forest tonight." My fingers went numb. I typed back before thinking, "Who is this?" No response. The wind outside began to rise, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance I heard it, the faint, mournful sound of a wolf howling. Except this time, it didn't sound wild. It sounded like a voice I almost knew. Elias. The next morning, the world seemed to lean slightly off its axis. Power lines buzzed faintly. The radio at the clinic kept losing signal. And when I drove past the edge of town, I noticed a line of trees that had been scorched, as if lightning had struck, but there had been no storm. That night, I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I took my flashlight, wrapped myself in my coat, and walked to the edge of the forest. The air there was colder unnaturally so. Every breath felt like inhaling frost. Elias? I called softly. My voice sounded small against the vastness of the trees. A shadow moved between the trunks, then another. Who's there? My flashlight flickered, dimmed, and died. Darkness swallowed me whole. A whisper came from the left too close. You shouldn't have come here. I turned, heart pounding. Elias? The shadows shifted and he stepped forward. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight. His face was both familiar and different, sharper, more primal. The air trembled around him. You've crossed the veil now, he said quietly. There's no going back. I took a step back. What are you talking about? What veil? The one that keeps my world from yours, he said. The moment you spoke my name in the night, you tore it open. My breath caught. You're saying He nodded once. You called the wrong wolf. Something howled behind us, low, furious, not human. Elias turned sharply, his expression hardening. They found you, he said. Run. I wanted to ask who they were, but then I saw their eyes gleaming in the dark. Dozens of them, circling. The trees creaked. The air seemed to pulse with something ancient and wild. Elias moved between me and the shadows. His voice was rough now, commanding. You won't touch her. I didn't see what happened next, only light. A bright, white flare that seared my vision. When it faded, I was alone. The forest was silent again, the wind gone still, but the scent of pine and smoke lingered in the air, and in the dirt at my feet. Drawn in a perfect circle were paw prints Elias's, and they glowed faintly, as if alive. That night, lying awake, I realized something terrible and certain. My ordinary world was gone. Whatever I had called out to that night in the storm, it had heard me. And it wasn't done with me yet. For 3 days after that night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elias's face half in shadow, half in light, his voice echoing through the woods. You called the wrong wolf. The forest no longer felt like home. The trees that once whispered peace now hummed with an uneasy pulse, like they were waiting for something. I caught movement in the corners of my eyes, a shape that vanished when I turned my head. The animals at the clinic grew restless again, pawing, pacing, sensing something I couldn't see. And yet, beneath all the fear, something inside me longed to see him again. I told myself it was curiosity, that I just needed answers, that deep down, I knew it was something far less logical. It was nearly dusk when I finally saw him again. I was closing up the clinic, the sky bleeding orange and violet over the pines, when the lights flickered once, then twice, and there he was, standing just beyond the fence, the wind teasing strands of his dark hair, his coat half unbuttoned as if he'd walked through a storm. He didn't move closer, but even from that distance, I could feel his presence, an invisible pull that drew me like gravity. I stepped outside, heart hammering. You can't just appear like that, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He tilted his head slightly, his lips curving into the faintest smile. And yet, here I am. Something about his calm unnerved me more than any threat. You said I crossed some kind of veil, I said, walking closer. That I called the wrong wolf. What does that even mean? He looked past me toward the setting sun, his expression distant. There are names you shouldn't speak under a blood moon, he said quietly. Some names carry power. Mine was never meant to be heard by human ears. So what happens now? I asked. What did I do to you? His gaze shifted to me then, sharp and burning. You didn't just summon me, Nora. You bound us. The words caught in my throat. Bound? He nodded once. The alpha bond is ancient. Once formed, it cannot be undone until destiny decides its end. I wanted to laugh, to dismiss it all as myth, but the way he said it, the weight in his voice, made it impossible. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Maybe," he said softly. "But tell me this since that night. Have you felt it? The pull? The sense that something inside you wakes when I'm near?" My breath caught. I didn't answer, but he didn't need me to. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Then you already know." We sat outside on the clinic porch as night fell, neither of us speaking for a while. The woods around us were still. The crickets hushed as though even they were listening. Finally, I said, "You make it sound like a curse." "Sometimes," he said, looking out at the trees, "it feels like one." "Then why don't you break it?" He looked at me again, eyes glowing faintly amber in the dim light. "Because if I did, you wouldn't remember me." Something in his voice, soft, regretful, almost human, made my chest ache. I didn't understand him. I didn't even know what he was. But sitting there beside him, I felt a strange sense of peace, as though the chaos in my head had quieted for the first time in days. We talked until the stars came out. He told me about the forest, how the old trees still whispered the names of those who had lived and died within their roots, about the way the wind changed before danger came. He didn't say much about himself, only that he had walked longer than most. When he spoke, his words carried the rhythm of ages, slow, careful, weighted with memory. I found myself asking, "Do you ever get lonely out there?" He paused. "Wolves don't feel loneliness the way humans do," he said. Then, almost afterthought, "But I did, once." The air between us grew heavy, the silence intimate but safe. I wanted to ask what had happened, who had made him sound that way, but I stopped myself. Some wounds weren't meant to be touched. When he finally stood to leave, I rose too. "Will I see you again?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "You will, even if you don't mean to." Then, just before turning away, he reached out, hesitating, as though fighting something, and brushed his fingers against my wrist. The touch was barely there, light as a breath, but a warmth spread up my arm, sinking deep into my chest, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. He stepped back as though realizing what he'd done. His voice was hoarse now. "Be careful, Nora. There are others who've sensed the bond. They'll come for you before the next full moon." "Who will?" I asked. But he was already gone. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the world had tilted again. I sat by the window, staring at the moon. It hung low and pale, veiled by a thin mist. My reflection looked strange in the glass, my eyes brighter than usual, my skin faintly flushed. I told myself it was exhaustion, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. When I finally drifted into sleep, dreams came in flashes, silver forests, glowing eyes, a circle of fire under a crimson sky. Ilir stood at the center, torn between two worlds, his hand reaching for me while shadows pulled him away. I woke with a gasp, heart racing, and that's when I heard it outside my window. A low growl, slow, drawn out. I froze. Carefully, I pulled the curtain aside. There, under the moonlight, stood a wolf. Its fur was silver white, its eyes the color of ash and ice. It was enormous, easily taller than any wolf I'd ever seen. For a heartbeat, I thought it might be Elias, but something about the way it looked at me cold. Calculating told me it WSN, single quotes T. Then, without warning, it turned its head. And I saw something hanging from its neck. A charm, black and broken, glinting faintly in the light. My pulse thundered in my ears. I recognized that charm. I'd seen it before. On the stranger who came to the clinic, the man with the silver eyes. The wolf bared its teeth, the faintest sound escaping its throat a promise. not a threat. Then it vanished into the trees. The night air was still again, but I couldn't breathe. Because now I understood what I had seen. Elias wasn't the only one hiding his true form. And whatever that other creature was, it knew I was bound to him. It wasn't going to let that stand. The morning after the silver wolf appeared, I could still feel its eyes on me. The house was quiet, but my nerves weren't. I checked the porch 3 times before unlocking the car. The ground still held paw prints, deep, defined, heavier than any natural animals. I crouched beside them and touched one, my fingers trembling. The soil felt strangely warm, as if the print had been left minutes ago, not hours. Something in me whispered to leave it alone. But another voice, the same one that had whispered Elias's name that night in the storm, pushed me forward. By noon, I found myself driving toward the forest again. I didn't have a reason, only a pull I couldn't fight. The woods were colder than usual. Shadows hung longer, and the air smelled faintly of rain, though the sky was clear. I followed the faint trail that led to the riverbank, the same place I'd found Elias the first night. And there he was, kneeling by the water, his hands dipped into the current, head bowed like he was washing something invisible away. His coat was gone, his shirt rolled up to his elbows, and even from a distance I could see faint marks along his arm, silver, almost like scars that shimmered. He looked up the moment I stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I needed answers," I replied. "And you keep disappearing before I can get any." A faint smile tugged at his lips, tired but real. "Some truths are heavier than they look." "Try me," I said. He studied me for a long moment, eyes unreadable. Then he stood, brushing the water from his hands. "What do you think I am, Nora?" I blinked, thrown off. He took a slow step forward. "You've seen the signs. The eyes. The way the air bends when I'm near. The way the animals react." His voice deepened slightly. "Say it." I swallowed. "You're not human." He nodded once. "No, not entirely." The words hung in the still air like a confession. "I'm one of the old ones," he said, his tone low and steady. "Not the kind your stories got right. I was born before names like werewolf or beast existed. I was chosen to bear the Alpha's mark, a curse meant to bind my spirit to the wild, to guard what's left of the balance between our world and yours. I felt my heartbeat in my ears." "So you're saying you're cursed?" "In a sense," he said. "Every full moon, the bond reminds me who I truly am. Not all of me survives it." I took an instinctive step back. "And you think I'm supposed to just accept that?" Elias's expression flickered something sharp beneath the calm. "You called me Nora. You opened the door between us. You may not want to believe in what I am, but the bond doesn't care what either of us believes." I shook my head. "I didn't mean to call anyone. I was trying to help an injured animal, and the forest listened," he interrupted gently. "It always listens." The way he said it sent a chill through me. I turned toward the river, staring at our reflections rippling in the water. His face looked almost human there, but his eyes, reflected in the current, glowed faintly gold. Part of me wanted to run. The other part wanted to reach out and touch the reflection, to see if it would ripple away or hold steady. "You're afraid," he said softly. "Shouldn't I be?" He looked at me then, truly looked. His eyes were sad, not wild. "Fear is wise," he murmured, "but don't mistake it for danger." I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight, torn between every rule I'd ever trusted and something older, deeper, something that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Though we stood feet apart, we walked along the riverbank as the sun began to fall. He told me fragments of his story, how he had once been human, long ago. How the Alpha's mark had chosen him when he tried to protect his village from a creature born of the moon's blood. He had taken the curse to save others, only to watch centuries pass as everything he loved faded. "How long have you been like this?" I asked quietly. He smiled faintly. "Long enough to forget what a normal heartbeat sounds like." Something inside me cracked then. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. The loneliness in his words mirrored the quiet ache that had lived in me for years. Ever since my father died, ever since I buried myself in work to avoid feeling empty. When I looked at him, I didn't see a monster. I saw someone who had been carrying the weight of his own legend for too long. And for a moment, that frightened me more than the claws or the curse. As dusk deepened, the forest changed again. The wind carried faint whispers like a dozen voices speaking through the trees. Elias froze mid-step. "They're close," he said. "Who?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned, his gaze scanning the shadows. "Go home. Lock every door. Don't open them for anyone until the moon sets." I grabbed his arm. "Elias, what's happening?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Pain, guilt, maybe even fear. Finally, he said, "The one you saw last night, the silver wolf, he's not just another like me. He's the first. The one who marked me. The one who cursed you." He nodded slowly. "And he wants the bond broken by any means." A branch snapped behind us. Elias turned sharply, his hand brushing mine, and for a heartbeat, I felt the bond again, warmth flooding through me. The world narrowing to just him. His eyes glowed gold in the fading light. "Go," he whispered. "Please." But I couldn't move. Something in his face had changed, not just fear, but something else. Something hidden. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, then said softly, "That I wasn't meant to survive the curse." The words hung between us like smoke. Before I could ask more, a growl echoed through the trees low and near. Elias stepped in front of me, every muscle tense. Then, out of the shadows, I saw movement. A figure human, but not. Silver eyes gleaming, just like the stranger from the clinic. He smiled coldly. "I told you to stay away from him, Doctor." Elias snarled under his breath, the sound more beast than man. And in that instant, I saw it, the faint shimmer spreading from his skin, the gold in his eyes flaring brighter, the air rippling around him like heat. His voice dropped an octave, rough and powerful. "Leave her out of this." The man's expression didn't change. "You've already doomed her." Before I could react, Elias turned to me. "Run." And then he changed. It wasn't violent or grotesque, but it was impossible to look away from. His form blurred, silver light bleeding through his skin. The air vibrated. His shadow lengthened, stretching into something vast and primal. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. For a heartbeat, he was both the man I'd come to trust and the creature I didn't understand. And then I heard his voice, layered and distant. "Nora, go." I ran. When I looked back once, the two figures had vanished into the trees. The sound of growling echoed through the night, low, deep, and heartbreakingly familiar. And though the forest swallowed the sound, one thought refused to leave me. I had trusted him. But now, I wasn't sure I knew which side of the curse he truly stood on. The forest didn't sleep that night. Branches rattled like bones in the cold wind, and even the owls had gone silent. I could feel it, the tremor beneath the calm, the way the air held its breath before a storm. I'd grown used to strange things lately, but this was different. The connection between me and Lucien had deepened in ways I couldn't explain. His presence felt like an echo in my own heartbeat, comforting yet dangerous. He came to my clinic sometimes after dark, always when the moon hung heavy. He'd bring small gifts, wildflowers, feathers, pieces of carved stone, and though he rarely said much, his eyes told stories of centuries I could never imagine. But lately, there was a shadow in him, a fear, and I didn't know whether it was meant to protect me or warn me. "Something's coming," he said one evening, his voice low, barely human. We were standing outside the clinic after I'd closed for the night. The lights from the nearby town flickered in the distance. But here, near the tree line, the world was darker, quieter. "Something?" I asked. "You mean one of your kind?" His jaw tightened. "Not mine. Not anymore." I wanted to ask more, but his expression silenced me. For the first time, I noticed faint scars across his neck like claw marks healed over time, too deep to belong to any animal I'd ever treated. He caught me staring. "They hunt what they don't understand," he said simply. My chest tightened. "Who?" Before he could answer, a distant howl shattered the night. It wasn't his. It was sharper, colder like a blade cutting through the dark. Lucien's eyes glowed faintly in response. Then he turned toward the sound, his entire body tensing. "You need to stay inside tonight," he said. "Lock every door. Don't open it, no matter what you hear." Lucien. But he was already gone, vanishing into the woods like a shadow melting into shadow. That night, I sat by the window, every light in the house on. I could hear faint movements outside, the crunch of leaves, the whisper of something brushing past the walls. At midnight, my phone rang. I jumped. The number was unknown. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" No voice, just breathing. And then softly, "You shouldn't have called him." My stomach dropped. "Who is this?" Click. The line went dead. The next morning, I found claw marks on my door. Not deep, but deliberate 5 curved lines etched into the wood like a warning. Lucien didn't come that day. Or the next. By the 3rd morning, I was pacing the clinic floor, unable to focus. Every time the bell above the door jingled, I hoped it would be him. But it was only Mrs. Weller with her cat, or Tom from the feed store dropping off supplies. Finally, at dusk, I saw him again. He stood at the edge of the parking lot, his clothes torn, his hair damp with sweat. There was blood just a little along his sleeve. "What happened?" I asked, rushing to him. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, eyes glowing faintly gold beneath the fading light. "They know who you are now," he said. "They've centered you. Lucien, you're scaring me." "Good," he said quietly. "Fear keeps you alive." That night, he told me more. There were others like him, wolves bound by blood and oath. But some had lost their way, consumed by the old hunger, serving no alpha but their rage. They called themselves the Broken Moon. "They don't want peace," he said. "They want dominance. The moment they sensed our bond, they saw you as a weakness." "Our bond?" I repeated. He met my eyes. "When you called me that night, you didn't just speak my name. You awakened it. The bond is ancient, older than the pack laws. It ties life to life, fate to fate." I swallowed hard. "You mean, I'm part of this now?" He nodded once. "And they will come for you, to test me." My hands trembled. "What if I leave? Go far away?" His gaze softened. "You could run to the ends of the earth, and they'd still follow. The bond isn't just a thread, it's a beacon." Over the next few days, strange things started happening. The air around the forest grew heavier. Wolves howled closer and closer each night. Even the town animals were restless, dogs barking at shadows, horses refusing to leave their stalls. One evening, as I was locking up, I found a dead raven on my doorstep. A Mark III slashes was carved into the dirt beside it. That night, I dreamed of fire. The woods were burning, and through the flames I saw Lucien standing on the ridge, surrounded by shadows with glowing red eyes. He turned toward me, lips moving, but I couldn't hear him. When I woke, my pillow was damp with tears. The next day he came again. His voice was urgent. "They're near. You have to trust me now." "Trust you," I said, stepping back. "Lucien, you're not telling me everything." He froze. His eyes flickered with hurt. "I can't. Not yet. Then how am I supposed to believe you?" His silence was answer enough. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The wind shifted. I could smell rain or something sharper, metallic dot then. From the woods came a sound that didn't belong to nature, a growl low and deliberate, followed by another, and another. Lucien's eyes darkened. "They've found us." Before I could move, he stepped in front of me, his entire body tensing, the air around him humming with power. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Protecting what's mine," he said. Then his form began to shimmer. His shadow stretched, reshaping. And for the first time, I saw the truth behind the man, the alpha beneath the moonlight. I stumbled back, heart racing. As the howls rose around us, the night had come alive. And I knew then, there was no going back to normal. Not after this. Not after him. Because whatever waited in those woods wasn't just hunting him anymore. It was hunting us. The night after the attack, the world felt quieter, but not safer. Lucien had vanished again, leaving behind only footprints in the mud, and a warning carved into my clinic door. Trust the blood, not the word. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know who to trust anymore. The lights flickered as I walked through the clinic halls, clutching a flashlight even though dawn had already touched the sky. Something inside me had changed since that night. It wasn't just fear, it was awareness. I could sense things now. The pull of the forest, the hum of unseen energy beneath my skin. Even the animals seemed to look at me differently, as if they knew something I didn't. I tried to ignore it, bury myself in work, pretend the world hadn't tilted. But when I looked in the mirror, my reflection didn't feel like mine anymore. My eyes seemed lighter, almost golden in certain light, and my skin hummed faintly with warmth whenever the moon rose. That morning, I found a letter slipped beneath my door. The envelope was sealed with dark wax, pressed with a symbol, an ornate crescent moon, and a single claw mark across it. My hands trembled as I broke it open. Inside was a single piece of parchment, old and brittle, written in looping handwriting. "You were never meant to live apart from the forest. The bond began long before you called his name. Seek the oak that bleeds silver. There you'll find what your mother hid." My mother. She had died when I was 12, long before I ever came to this town. I remembered her as gentle, quiet, always humming old songs at night, that she never spoke of magic, wolves, or anything beyond the ordinary. Still, something about that message clawed at memory. The next day, I closed the clinic early and drove toward the northern woods, where the trees grew thicker and older than anywhere else. The locals avoided that area, said compasses spun wild there, and animals wouldn't cross. The forest greeted me in uneasy silence. The deeper I went, the colder the air became. Then I saw it, the oak, massive and ancient, its bark cracked like old scars. From one split in the trunk, silver sap trickled down like molten moonlight. I touched it. The sap was warm. And the moment my fingers brushed it, images flashed before my eyes. A woman in a long cloak, my mother kneeling beneath the same tree. She was holding something, a pendant shaped like a crescent moon glowing faintly. A wolf stood beside her, black as night, eyes gold as fire. Her voice echoed faintly through my mind. Forgive me, my child. The bond will find you when the time is right. Protect your heart, for it carries our curse. Then the vision vanished. I stumbled back, gasping. My pulse raced as I searched the base of the tree, and there, beneath the roots, half buried in earth and moss, I found a small wooden box. Inside was the pendant. It shimmered faintly, almost breathing with its own light. The moment I lifted it, the ground trembled. The forest seemed to exhale, and from the shadows I heard someone approach. Put it down, a voice said sharply. Lucien. He emerged from between the trees, his eyes glowing faintly even in daylight. You shouldn't be here, he said. That symbol, do you even know what it means? I clenched the pendant in my hand. It belonged to my mother. She hid it here. I think she wanted me to find it. He stared at me, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. Your mother's name was Ilara, wasn't it? I froze. How do you know that? He hesitated before answering. Because she was one of us. For a moment I couldn't breathe. That's not possible, I whispered. She was human. She was born human, Lucien said softly, stepping closer. But she carried the mark of the moonline, the bloodline that once bound alphas and seers. It's a rare lineage, thought to be extinct. Until you. I shook my head. No, I would have known. Would you? His voice dropped lower. The moonline hid its children in plain sight. They could sense danger, calm beasts, even call an alpha by instinct. My heart pounded. That night I called your name. He nodded. It wasn't chance. It was inheritance. Your blood called mine. The pendant in my hand grew warmer, its light pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I looked down at it, then back at him. So what does this mean for me? Lucien's expression darkened. It means you are no longer prey, but neither are you safe. The broken moon hunts what they fear, and they feared your bloodline for centuries. We stood in silence, the forest whispering around us. I wanted to run, to hide, but a strange calm settled over me instead. Maybe it was the pendant, or maybe something deeper, waking inside. I saw her, I said quietly. My mother, in a vision. She said my heart carries the curse. Lucien's jaw tightened. It's not a curse, it's power. But power always demands something in return. What kind of return? He looked away. The moonline's gift is bound to the moon's will. It grants strength, sight, and the bond, but it also takes life from those who misuse it. A chill ran through me. So if I use it, he nodded, you'll begin to change. I stared down at my hands, half expecting to see fur or claws. But they were still mind-shaking, human, trembling with truth. As we made our way back to the clearing, Lucien stopped suddenly. His nostrils flared. We're not alone. Before I could ask what he meant, 3 shadows emerged from between the trees. Their eyes glowed crimson. Wolves half-formed, walking on 2 legs. Their faces caught between beast and man. Lucien moved in front of me instantly, his body bristling with energy. Run, he hissed. But before I could, one of the figures stepped forward and spoke. You think you can protect her, old alpha? The creature growled. She carries what belongs to us. Lucien's snarl was low and deadly. She belongs to no one. The creature's eyes flicked to me, and for a moment, I saw something strange in them. Not hatred, but recognition. Don't you remember? It said, you're one of us. I froze. What did you just say? Lucien's hand tightened around my arm. Don't listen. But the creature smiled, baring fangs that gleamed in the half-light. She's not your mate, Alpha, it hissed. She's the last of the moonline born to awaken us all, to choose which side of the moon will rise again. Before I could speak, the air around us erupted in blinding white light. The pendant, flaring in my palm. Lucian shouted my name. The forest disappeared. For an instant, I was nowhere and everywhere, standing in a place of silver mist and shadowed moonlight. I heard whispers, thousands of voices calling my name, and among them, one rose above the rest. My mother's voice. The bond was never about love, my child. It was about balance, and now, you must decide which side of him will live. The light shattered. When I opened my eyes again, I was alone. The pendant was cold in my hand. Lucian and the wolves were gone. And in the silence that followed, I finally understood. The bond I'd awakened wasn't just between me and him. It was between light and darkness itself, and I was standing in the middle of it. The silence after the light faded was too perfect. No rustling leaves, no distant owls, just an aching stillness that pressed against my ears until I could hear my own pulse. Lucian, I whispered into the empty air. No answer. Only the soft creak of branches swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. The silver pendant in my palm had gone dark, but it was still warm, like it remembered something I didn't. My thoughts raced. The last thing I remembered was his voice shouting my name. And then nothing. I turned in slow circles, realizing the forest around me wasn't the same one I'd entered. Everything shimmered faintly, outlines of trees bending with the rhythm of the air. The light had a strange blue tint, almost like moonlight trapped at noon. Then I heard a faint heartbeat. Not mine. It pulsed from somewhere ahead, slow and steady. Drawn toward it, I moved through the glowing mist until I saw a shape kneeling at the edge of a stream. Lucian. He was breathing hard, his shirt torn, his back streaked with blood and ash. But his eyes still glowed, fierce and golden even here. When he looked up and saw me, relief and fear crossed his face at once. "You shouldn't have followed," he rasped. "I didn't follow," I said, falling to my knees beside him. "Whatever happened, it brought me here." He stared past me, eyes narrowing. "The veil between worlds is thinning. They must have forced the bond." I blinked. "Who?" "The broken moon. They used your pendant. They want to anchor your power to them, to awaken what sleeps beneath this place." I frowned, shaking my head. "Lucian, I don't understand any of this. I'm not—" "You are," he interrupted, his voice soft but fierce. "You're more moonline than human now. Your call woke the alpha bond. The rest of them, they can feel it." I touched the pendant. "Then maybe I can stop them." His hand shot out, gripping mine before I could rise. "No, you don't know the cost." The warmth of his touch spread up my arm, steadying my panic. Even now, I could feel that strange, magnetic pull between us, a connection that made fear blur into something deeper. "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what you're not saying." He looked away. "Every alpha bond comes with a choice. One life strengthens the other, or ends it." My breath caught. "Meaning?" "If one of us falls, the bond breaks. But if both try to fight it, it consumes us." He released my hand slowly. "That's why you can't stay near me." We sat in silence, the stream glowing faintly beside us. I wanted to argue, to tell him I wasn't afraid, but the truth was, I was. Not of him, but of what I was becoming. When I looked at my reflection in the water, I saw faint silver veins glimmering beneath my skin. My pulse echoed with a sound that wasn't quite human anymore, something old, ancient. "Lucian," I whispered. "What if I can control it?" He gave a low laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Even I can't control what you carry." A chill crept up my spine. "So what do I do?" He hesitated. "There's an old ritual, the lunar binding. It can stabilize your bond. But if it fails—" He didn't finish the sentence. "Then we try," I said. You don't understand. If it fails, it takes the bonded souls into the hollow. Neither alive nor dead. Just echoes. I swallowed hard. And if it works, then you'll be free. The words hung in the air between us, hope and fear, twisted together like vines. Before either of us could speak again, a sound tore through the stillness. A whisper, low at first, then growing louder like dozens of voices speaking at once, overlapping in a single phrase. She carries the moon's heart. Lucien's head snapped up. His eyes flared. They found us. From the mist, figures began to form, shadows with burning eyes. The broken moon. Their outlines wavered like smoke, but their presence was heavy, suffocating. Lucien pushed me behind him. Run. I'll hold them off. No, my voice shook. We do this together. He turned, eyes blazing with a mix of anger and something deeper. You don't understand what they want. They'll use you to destroy everything the Moonline built. Then they'll have to go through both of us. The pendant on my chest pulsed once, twice, then flared to life, sending a wave of silver light across the clearing. The shadows hissed, recoiling. For a moment the air was alive with light and sound. A clash between ancient forces older than the stars themselves. Lucien shouted something I couldn't hear over the roar, his voice lost in the storm of energy. Then, suddenly silence. The light vanished. When I opened my eyes, the forest was still again. The shadows were gone, but so was Lucien. Panic surged through me. Lucien! Only the wind answered. I stumbled through the clearing, searching the mist until my knees hit the ground. The pendant had dimmed, but it still pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Then I saw it. A single black feather lying in the dirt, shimmering faintly with silver dust. I reached for it, and the moment my fingers touched it, a voice echoed in my head. To find him, you must cross into your own past. The feather turned to ash in my palm, my breath hitched. My own past. The forest around me flickered, shifting for a moment. The trees melted into familiar shapes, the outline of my childhood home, the swing set in our old backyard. My mother's laughter, distant and haunting, echoed in the air. She had known. She had hidden the truth all along. I looked down at the pendant and realized it wasn't glowing randomly, it was pulsing in rhythm with my heart. And somewhere deep in that rhythm, I could feel Lucien. Weak, but alive. They hadn't destroyed him. They'd taken him somewhere between worlds. And somehow, I was the key to bringing him back. The sky darkened suddenly, though I couldn't tell if it was night or illusion. A faint figure appeared at the edge of the clearing, a woman cloaked in silver light. Who are you? I asked, rising slowly. She smiled sadly. You already know. It was her. My mother. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. Because love and destiny are the same thing, child, she said softly. Both demand sacrifice. Lucien's fate is tied to yours now. To save him, you must remember who you are and what the Moonline truly guards. Her voice began to fade as the wind rose. Wait, I cried. What does that mean? Her eyes glowed faintly. The heart of the moon beats inside you. But be careful if it breaks. The balance breaks with it. Then she was gone. I stood there alone. The forest spinning around me. The pendant burning against my skin. Lucien was somewhere between life and shadow. The broken moon was rising again. And the truth about my blood, my power, was still only half revealed. But one thing was certain. The next time the moon rose full, nothing would ever be the same again. The moon rose red that night. It wasn't supposed to. There was no eclipse. Number storm, no reason for the sky to burn that color. But as the light spilled through my window, I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a summons. Lucien was calling me. For days, I had felt his presence flicker like a dying flame, caught between worlds. Every heartbeat echoed with his name. Every dream led me back to the same place, a silver gate deep in the forest, veiled in mist and moonlight. And tonight, the call was too strong to resist. I packed a flashlight, the pendant, and the letter I'd found under my door. My hands trembled, but there was no turning back. The moment I stepped into the woods, the air shifted. The forest seemed alive, its branches arching like arms, its shadows moving with purpose. The wind carried whispers, half warnings, half memories. By the time I reached the clearing, the red moon hung directly overhead, and the silver gate stood before me, tall, ancient, carved with runes that pulsed like a living heartbeat. I hesitated only once, running my thumb over the pendant. It flared softly, and the gate responded, slowly parting with a sound like a sigh. A rush of cold air swept through me. And then I stepped through. The world beyond wasn't the forest. It was a reflection of it, twisted, darker, glowing faintly with ghostlight. The trees whispered names I didn't know. The stars above looked close enough to touch, and the air shimmered with energy. I was in the veil, the space between the living and the eternal. I followed the sound of my heart. No, not mine, his. Each pulse guided me through winding paths until I saw him at last, kneeling in a circle of light. Lucien. His head snapped up. His eyes glowed brighter than I'd ever seen. But there was something wrong in them. They weren't golden anymore. They were streaked with crimson. When I reached for him, he flinched. "Don't," he whispered hoarsely. "You shouldn't be here." "You said the veil would consume us," I said, voice breaking. "I couldn't let that happen." He shook his head. "You don't understand. It already has me." I took a step closer. "We can still fix this." "The pendant, stop," he roared, his voice echoing unnaturally through the mist. The ground trembled beneath us. Shadows rippled outward like waves in a pond. I froze. He looked at me with something like sorrow. "They offered me a choice," he said quietly. "The broken moon. My freedom. Or your safety." My stomach twisted. "What did you do?" His jaw clenched. "I chose you." A sound like distant thunder rolled through the air, followed by a dozen pairs of glowing eyes appearing in the dark. The shadows stepped forward, tall, half-formed, more spirit than flesh. The leader of the broken moon emerged, a figure cloaked in black mist, his eyes gleaming silver. "So it's true," the creature hissed. "The moonline lives, and you, Alpha, are bound to her blood." Such devotion. Lucien's voice was low and sharp. "You'll never touch her." The figure smiled. "That she's the key to everything we've lost." He turned to me. "Do you know what you carry, child? That pendant isn't protection. It's a seal. It locks away the heart of the moon. Break it, and the power returns to its rightful owners." I clutched it tighter. "You mean, to you?" "To balance," he said, though his smile was cruel. "The moonline stole that balance long ago. You can end the curse tonight. Open the seal, and both your worlds will be free." Lucien moved between us, his body trembling. "Don't listen. He wants to use you. If you break the seal, the bond will die with both of us." My breath caught. "But if I don't?" The figure tilted his head. "Then he fades into shadow forever." The world spun around me. I could hear my mother's voice in memory. Love and destiny demand sacrifice. I looked at Lucien. His eyes glowed with pain, the red slowly overtaking the gold. The veil was consuming him, just as he'd warned. "You can't stay here," he said, voice shaking. "Please, go." "I won't." I whispered. Not without you. He smiled faintly brokenly. You're too much like her. Before I could ask what he meant, the ground split beneath us. The circle of light shattered, and I was thrown back against the rocks. The pendant slipped from my hand, skittering across the ground until it landed at the feet of the cloaked figure. He picked it up, the glow reflecting in his eyes. At last, he murmured. The heart of the moon. Lucien lunged, but invisible force flung him back, slamming him against the barrier of the circle. He roared in pain. Stop, I screamed. The figure turned to me. You have one choice, child of Alara. Open the seal yourself and save him, or watch the bond devour you both. The pendant floated between us, its light pulsing faster, stronger, like a heartbeat out of control. Lucien's voice cut through the chaos. Don't do it. Tears blurred my vision. He'll kill you. Then let him, he shouted. If you open it, you'll lose yourself. You'll lose everything. The shadows around us grew thicker, closing in like a storm. I reached for the pendant, my fingers trembling. The power inside it called to me, whispering promises, freedom, strength, truth. Then the red moon appeared above, casting its light directly on us. The pendant exploded with brilliance. The world dissolved into wind and light, and suddenly, I was no longer in the veil. I was standing in the ruins of an old stone temple, the pendant still in my hand, its light fading, but Lucien was gone. All that remained was his voice soft, echoing through the air. If you open it, I'll come for you. But not as I was. The words sent a chill through my soul. I looked up. The red moon still hung above, but now it was cracked, splintered like glass. And in its broken reflection, for the first time, I saw something inside my own shadow that wasn't human anymore. Something waiting to awaken. I sank to my knees, clutching the pendant against my heart as the wind rose, carrying the scent of smoke and silver. Lucien was alive, but changed. The seal was weakening Dot, and the part of me that was still human was starting to fade. The next moon would decide everything. The night I thought I lost Lucien, the world changed. The moon was no longer whole. Its cracked reflection followed me everywhere, on water, on glass, even in my dreams. I had brought the veil's curse into the waking world. For days, the forest grew darker. The air hummed with unseen energy. The pendant, once a comfort now, burned cold against my skin, whispering his name in my sleep. Dot. And every time I woke, I heard it. A low growl in the wind. A promise. A warning. Lucien was near, but not as he was. On the 7th night, I followed the sound to the place where our worlds had first met. The clearing by the river. Mist rolled across the ground. The moon hung above, cracked but burning silver white again. The trees bowed inward as if in reverence or fear. And then he appeared. Lucien stepped out of the shadows, the same but not. His eyes glowed crimson and gold, his presence commanding and strange. The mark on his chest shimmered faintly through his shirt, pulsing like a heartbeat. I couldn't breathe. Lucien. His voice was quieter now, lower. You shouldn't have come. I took a step closer. You said you'd come for me. He smiled faintly, sadly. I didn't say which part of me would. The wind stirred. The pendant at my throat flared in response. The moment the light touched him, he winced as if burned. I understood then. The bond between us had changed. It wasn't just love anymore. It was a tether between human and something far older. What are you now? I whispered. He looked away. A bridge between two worlds. And bridges don't belong to either side. My heart ached. You think I care what you've become? He turned sharply, eyes flashing red. You should. Every breath you take weakens the veil. The shadows are leaking through because of us. His anger wasn't cruel, it was desperate. He was trying to save me by pushing me away, but I couldn't let him. Not again. We can fix this, I said firmly. We always find a way. Lucien's voice softened. This time, the way demands a sacrifice. Before I could ask what he meant, the ground shuddered. The trees bent backward as a cold wind tore through the clearing. The sky split open. And from it descended the cloaked figure of the broken moon. He hovered just above the earth, his voice echoing like thunder and whisper combined. You've done well, child of the moonline, he said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. You broke the seal. Now offer the heart itself. Lucien stepped in front of me, his stance protective. You will not touch her. The figure laughed softly. You are already one of us, Alpha. Why fight what you've become? Lucien growled, the sound low and wild. Because she's not yours to claim. The figure raised a hand. Shadows twisted into the shape of wolves, dozens of them eyes glowing silver. They circled the clearing, their forms flickering between smoke and flesh. End this, the shadow hissed. Give her to the moon, and your curse will lift. I clutched the pendant. Its glow brightened, pulsing with my heartbeat. If it's my life you want, take it. But let him go. Lucien spun toward me. No. Lucien, if this is the only way. He seized my hand, eyes blazing. You don't understand. If you give them the heart, they don't take your life. They take your light. The world will forget you ever existed. My throat tightened. Then what do we do? He hesitated, pain crossing his face. We destroy it. I stared at him, horrified. But the pendant holds your bond. Your life. He nodded slowly. I was never meant to stay in this world. No, I whispered, shaking my head. You can't ask me to. Luna, he said softly, using my name like a prayer. You already saved me once. Now save both worlds. The shadow army closed in. Their growls rose like a storm. Lucien turned to face them, his form glowing faintly under the broken moon. His voice boomed through the clearing, commanding, ancient. By the moonline oath, I claim this night. A surge of energy burst from him, knocking several shadows back. The pendant around my neck grew heavier, the light flaring in rhythm with his power. But I could feel it, the balance tipping. The more he fought, the more the veil fractured. I knew what I had to do. I ran toward him. Hold them off. He caught my arm. Don't. I love you, Lucien, I said, tears streaming down my face. Enough to let you go. Before he could stop me, I tore the pendant from my neck and held it high. The moonlight hit it, splitting into silver shards that pierced the darkness. The broken moon figure screamed, the sound dissolving into wind as light engulfed him. The shadow wolves howled and vanished like smoke. Lucien fell to his knees, clutching his chest as the mark on him blazed. Luna! The pendant cracked in my hands, its glow spilling upward, beautiful, blinding, endless. I felt warmth fill me, then lift from me, as if my soul itself was being rewritten. The last thing I heard was his voice, soft and raw. I will find you, even if the stars forget your name. When the light faded, I was standing alone in the clearing. The moon was whole again. The air was still. The pendant was gone, only a faint silver mark remained. Over my heart. Lucien was nowhere to be seen. But the forest was alive again, bathed in calm light. The shadows were gone. The balance had returned. And though the world felt quieter, I knew he was still out there. Somewhere between moonlight and memory, I could feel him in every heartbeat. Every gust of wind, every whisper of my name through the trees. Maybe love wasn't meant to last forever in one form. Maybe it changed, like the moon fading and returning, never truly gone. As dawn broke, I smiled through my tears. The curse was over. The world was safe. And though he was gone, Lucian's promise echoed softly in my mind. When the moon rises again, look for the shadow that stands in the light. I looked up at the sky. And for just a moment, in the silver haze before sunrise, I saw him. A silhouette at the edge of the trees, watching. Silent. Waiting. The days after the final night felt like waking from a long, strange dream. The forest no longer carried the weight of shadows. The wind was gentle, and sunlight filtered through the trees in golden streams. Birds sang with ease, and even the animals at the clinic seemed lighter, freer. Somehow, the world had regained its balance. My heart still carried the echoes of the veil. The pendant was gone, and with it, the bond I had shared with Lucian. But I could still feel him in small ways, in the warmth of the sun on my skin, the rustle of leaves, the soft rhythm of the night wind. It wasn't the same as holding him, but it was enough to remind me that some connections are too strong to be erased, no matter how much the world demands it. I returned to the clearing where the final confrontation had happened, half expecting to see emptiness. Instead, the ground was dotted with silver blossoms, flowers I had never seen before, glowing faintly in the dawn. I knelt and touched one, feeling a pulse beneath its petals. Lucian, I whispered. Are you here? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, as if answering, a soft breeze swept through the clearing, carrying a familiar scentwood smoke, rain-soaked earth, and something distinctly him. I smiled through the tears. He's safe. Wherever he is, he survived. It was a bittersweet truth. We had fought impossible odds, faced ancient forces, and survived because of our bond. But surviving didn't mean being together. At least, not yet. The clinic had returned to its normal rhythm. Patients came and went, and I busied myself with everyday life. I still felt different. Every now and then, the air around me would hum with energy, as if the moonline's bloodline within me stirred in quiet, subtle ways. I could sense when an animal was unwell before they even showed signs. Sometimes I could feel a presence lingering at the edge of perception, and I knew it was him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and painted the sky in orange and pink, I went for a walk in the forest. The clearing where the silver blossoms grew glowed faintly in the fading light. I paused, taking it, all in the calm after the storm, the quiet beauty that followed chaos. And then I heard a soft movement behind me. Luna. I turned. There he was. Lucian. Taller than I remembered, his eyes golden once again, reflecting the last rays of the sun. His expression was gentle, patient, but there was a shadow of weariness beneath it. I wanted to run to him, to throw myself into his arms, but I stayed rooted, unsure. Lucian. My voice cracked. He stepped closer, but he didn't reach for me immediately. Instead, he studied me, taking in the subtle changes in me, the way I carried myself, the new strength that seemed to hum beneath my skin. You've changed, he said softly. So have you, I replied. He smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and quiet pride. We both survived. That's what matters. I wanted to argue, to say that survival wasn't enough. But looking at him, the way the wind played through his hair, the faint glow of the moonlight on his skin, I realized that surviving together was a kind of victory in itself. We walked together through the clearing, side by side, letting the silence speak for us. There was no need for words. Our bond, though changed, had not vanished. The events of the past weeks had tested us in ways that ordinary love could never endure. We had faced fear, sacrifice, and the weight of destiny. And we had come through it, stronger and wiser. At the edge of the forest, he stopped and turned to me. Luna, I can't promise that all danger is gone, but I can promise that wherever the moonline cools, I will always find my way back to you. I smiled through tears, feeling the warmth of hope in my chest. And I'll be waiting, Lucien, no matter how long it takes. He reached for my hand this time. Our fingers intertwined, and the connection was electric, not in a way that burned, but in a way that reminded me of everything we had fought for. It's not the bond that matters, he said quietly, but what we choose to do with it. And I choose us, I whispered. As night fell, we sat together beneath the silver blossoms. The moon rose full and bright, unmarred by shadow, reflecting in the river like a mirror. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. There was still uncertainty, of course. The world of humans and the supernatural would always intersect in strange ways. The veil would never completely vanish, and the broken moon might rise again. But we had each other, and for now that was enough. I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath mine. The forest whispered its approval, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of the river, and the soft hum of the night wind. This, I said softly, is worth everything we've endured. He kissed my forehead gently. It is, and we will endure whatever comes next together. The first light of dawn touched the clearing, illuminating every silver blossom and reflecting off the river. It was a promise, a reminder that even after the darkest nights, the light returns. I stood, looking up at the moon one last time before it faded into daylight. Lucien stood beside me, silent but unwavering. In that moment, I realized something important. Love is not always about possession or proximity. Sometimes, love is about trust, courage, and the knowledge that even if worlds separate you, hearts remain bound. We had lost much the comfort of certainty, the simplicity of ordinary life, the naive belief that the world was predictable. But we had gained more strength, wisdom, and a love that had been tempered in fire and shadow, emerging brighter than either of us had thought possible. I turned to him and smiled, finally letting myself believe in hope again. Ready to go back? He nodded. Back to our world, back to life. And together, we stepped from the clearing, leaving behind the shadows, the broken moon, and the echoes of the veil. The forest seemed to breathe with us, alive and welcoming. Every step we took was a testament to survival, to courage, and to the enduring power of the heart. As we walked into the dawn, hand in hand, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter the challenges that awaited, no matter the worlds we would face, love true, patient, resilient love would always find a way. And in that knowledge I felt complete.